Joe Biden will deliver his first joint address to Congress tonight. The message expected to be partly a victory lap with his administration's COVID response and partly a pitch for his broader future agenda. The question is whether he will be able to find enough support from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Washington reporter Kevin Fry joins me now with a preview. Kevin, essentially this is a State of the Union address, but because this is his first, we don't call it that.
Yeah, it's all but a State of the Union in name only. But when it comes down to it, this is obviously, it goes without saying, his chance to really be on the national stage, in the national spotlight, and to make his pitch for what comes next. And we expect him to really outline kind of a series of policies that he wants to pursue and he wants Congress to take up over the next couple months. He already has that infrastructure plan out there. Now he's moving to what he's labeling the American Families Plan, essentially, a $1.8 trillion, roughly speaking, proposal that includes everything from universal pre-K, universal preschool, also free community college, paid family leave for a national program on that, in addition to help for care and for families beyond the scope of that. So a lot of different things that he's going to be pitching tonight, trying to get Congress to buy on, kind of arguing that, look, the pandemic exposed all of these issues that we now need to act upon. In order to pay for all of this, he's going to be pushing for a variety of tax measures, largely focused on increasing taxes on the wealthy, everything from increasing the capital gains tax for those making over $1 million. The White House says that's about 500,000 or so households across the country. There's also a push to up IRS enforcement to try to pay for this. We'll see if any of that goes anywhere on Capitol Hill.
There's a theater to these events where they typically pack lawmakers in from both sides. In the guest galleries, there'll be, the president will ask Jim the barber from Idaho to come, and he'll say, up there in the rafters is Jim, who's had a heck of a time during this pandemic. So I'm a little bit cynical about that in a normal year. Will we still see that in a pandemic year when they've thinned out the number of people?
Well, and if you remember during the last one of these, I think it was the last one of these, time is a bit of a flat circle, President Trump kind of used it almost as a showmanship thing that he would introduce surprise guests as part of this. This year it's going to be much more scaled down for obvious reasons with the pandemic. About 200 lawmakers only in the chamber. No big guest area with Dr. Jill Biden, the First Lady. So it's going to be a much smaller affair because of safety protocols. Obviously, a lot of lawmakers have been inoculated thus far, but this will, of course, allow for more social distancing. There's one other thing to keep an eye on tonight, which is just the optics of this, history in the making, essentially, that you're going to have Kamala Harris, the vice president, and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, two women, sitting behind Joe Biden, albeit we'll see if they change up the spacing and distancing just because of COVID.
We are hearing from some of the members of New York's congressional delegation about the speech tonight. Here's what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said she will be listening to hear the president say.
What I think I'll be listening for is what the scope of that ambition will be looking forward. Now that that bill's behind us, will that ambition really be matched, not just in goals, but in actual investments and policy?
And Pat, if you take a listen to what she's saying there, this is kind of building off of a conversation I had with her at a town hall just recently, where I kind of asked her directly, I'm like, how do you evaluate President Biden's first 100 days? And she said that overall he exceeded expectations for folks on the progressive end of the spectrum. But she said a lot of the focus has been on that initial COVID response bill, where it was pretty easy to rally the troops on the Democratic side of the aisle to get everyone in line. Now comes the harder part with the next step. And so she is already suggesting that, for example, the infrastructure plan he introduced is not big enough. So we'll see what she makes of this American Family Plan that the president is expected to pitch this evening. Of course, across the aisle, we are hearing from Republicans as well. We already expect them to be skeptical of a lot of what the president is pitching. Nicole Maliotakis from Staten Island is going to be one of the lawmakers actually in the chamber, she says. And so she is looking for some degree of bipartisanship. Here's a little of what she said in a statement. She said, I'm hopeful the president's outreach is a signal of his willingness to work together on transportation and infrastructure investment, reinstating the SALT deduction, and securing our nation's borders. Obviously, these are some of the things that the members of the GOP are pushing for and have been criticizing the president for, and particularly when it comes to the response to the migrant situation at the southern border. But having Republican buy-in on any of these big proposals and these tax increases, it's going to be hard to see. So this could be setting up potentially another situation where some of Biden's plans, if he wants to get them done, they might have to go it alone on the Democratic side of the aisle, Pat.
Glad you could join us for a preview this morning, Kevin. Thank you. Our New York One Live coverage scheduled to start at 8.